can see, as indeed we can, into the true nature of things. It was this that made us think that, in you, we could save ourselves. The powers that lie in your minds, in the dormant 80% of your human brains, can be our weapons against the enemy. So we began experiments. About 60 years ago we took the decision to start experimenting on human beings. Some of us opposed the idea, but the majority was in favor as it seemed the only option open to us. Some of us suggested that we make contact with you, reveal our existence, but to be honest, 60 years ago you were like children playing with new toys, atom bombs, nuclear power, rockets, and your wild imaginations were keeping you awake at night thinking about life from other planets and how nasty it would be. So it was not the time to make contact. We don't even think the human race is ready yet, for as a species you are very stupid, but we have no choice now. That is why we made ourselves known to you 5 years ago. We knew the time was coming when we might need your help, so we established contact in the way we did. But we now know that the second ship is fast approaching the outer edge of the solar system. They will soon be here. Our experiments tried to stimulate the sleeping parts of your brains. We tried to increase your mental powers, while still retaining some sort of control over you. The implants, thought Mark. Yes, the implants. And my father. Yes, your father, answered the Soros. Subject number 506919. And then you, but you were not the subject of one of our experiments. You, Mark Daniels, are the subject of your father's experiment. It's strange how fate turns out. It was precisely because we exercised no control over you that you developed in your own particular way. You are a rogue element. We only discovered you when you visited the ship the first time. We sensed the magnetic fields you generated. Oh, you have no idea how powerful you can be, and we realized that in you lay our best hope. But you were trying to stifle the power you had. We had to get you to see yourself for what you were. So you arranged what I suppose you will call my education, yes. We arranged it all, including, sadly, the death of Miller. The organization called the Human Freedom League, while they think they are plotting against us, are actually doing our work. The implants again. Mark had the confirmation of his earlier suspicions. They all have implants, and I am in fact the one they think of as the chairman. Miller was not an enemy, but you had to be put through a series of emotional traumas, and it was calculated that witnessing his death was the climax of those. It is your emotions that give you much of your power. We were helping you to grow. Mark remembered Miller's body as it lay slumped against the verge, and he remembered the images he had seen of his father, and he thought about the anguish his mother had gone through. We had to do what we did, insisted the Soros leader. We had to. If we had let you bumble on in your own little way, the second ship would have arrived, and that would be the end of Soros, the end of humanity, the end of our planet. You must understand that. But Mark, understanding or not, felt only cold, cold rage. Power began to gather again in some deep recess of his mind. A needle's thin tip was inserted into his neck. Now we take what we want, he heard a Soros say. The second Soros had clearly come back into the room. Enough of this talk. Begin the process to use what we need now, without delay. The drug was very powerful and Mark was helpless to resist. 29 Jeanette and Carrie. They had been escorted by the soldiers to the McIntyre's Field Center first while Robert's identity was verified and thereafter removed to Allied Command Headquarters. Jeanette and Carrie were inconsolable. Robert's attempts to say something foundered against their combined despair. He used his influence to find them comfortable rooms within the underground complex and sent word to Carrie's parents. Martin had been released from hospital with what amounted to no more than a slight head wound, and they would soon arrive to offer what comfort they could to their daughter. Roberts had never felt so helpless, so useless. No words of his could ever make this situation any better. He moved restlessly in the well-appointed lounge that had been allocated to them and busied himself from time to time with other aspects of the investigation. Carrie and Jeanette ignored him. For the umpteenth time Roberts checked his watch. It was 11:15 a.m. As if someone had been waiting for a cue, the door opened and an aide entered and took up an at-ease position. "General Talbot to see you, sir, ladies," he said. Red-eyed. Jeanette and Carrie looked up as Talbot came in. The newcomer was a tall man, in army uniform, with lots of gold and braid and ribbons above the left breast pocket. He wore thin, black-rimmed glasses, and his hair was grey-black, combed back. "My name's Talbot. Andrew Talbot." His manner was serious, concerned and sincere. "Aaron Miller was bringing Mark to see me, and then we were going to arrange for him to visit the Soros leader. Events now seem to have moved out of our control, somewhat. I am what's known as the General Officer, commanding Scotland. I want you to know we are trying to understand exactly what has been going on and precisely what has happened to your son." Mrs. Daniels. He took command of the situation with cool confidence. "But if you don't mind, I'd like to get a doctor in here. Dr. Sheila Gold, who will give you quick checkup to make sure you're all right." I know, you're a doctor yourself, but I'd rather one of our people gave you a checkup." Jeanette nodded apathetically. "If you want. What difference does it make, in the meantime, if there's anything else you need?" Jeanette's expression came to life and she stood up, almost defiantly. "There is. Apart from my son back. A magnetic resonance imaging machine," said Jeanette. "Please, a what?" "A magnetic resonance imaging machine. Sterling Royal will have one you can borrow, or some doctors' surgeries even have them now. Maybe you've even got one here. I don't know. I used to have one, before the goddamn Soros blew my home to pieces." Talbot said he would see what he could do. "It's important that you understand, Dr. Daniels, that I am not your enemy." Jeanette appraised him carefully. "We LLC," she said. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Darkness. No sensation. "This must be death," thought Mark. "I've been killed and my soul is drifting somewhere in space and time, cut off from everything. I have no eyes to see with, no ears to hear with, no nose to smell things, no nerves to feel things. I am just thought, drifting, and alone. What have they done to me? What have they done?" He was not afraid. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Jeanette was mildly surprised when General Talbot and Director Roberts willingly submitted to the MRI scan. She set it up in their living quarters. "Anyone ever told you you should have your head examined?" asked Jeanette, as she affixed the sensors to Talbot's head. There was no real humor in her tone. "What is it you think the test will show?" asked Talbot. "We LLC in a minute," answered Jeanette. "Hold still now. This one T hurt a bit." The device whirred slightly inside itself, some internal cooling fan, and after a moment the result of the scan was printed on specially coated paper. "Hold that. Carrie, will you?" Carrie took the image Jeanette handed her. She looked at it, frowned, but could make nothing of it. "There appears to be a brain," Carrie remarked. "Well, that's something," replied Jeanette. "Now you, Roberts, please call me Chris." Once the scans were complete, Jeanette laid the images out on a square plastic table. "This is how it began," she said. "I scanned my son's head. He had been feeling a kind of pain here." She pointed at a location on Talbot's image, "and we found something that suggested a growth or an implant. He felt it was a growth and it was causing him to feel things. After the scan, his feelings got more intense, and he began to see things. It turned out he was hooked into the Soros in some way and the magnetic scan had switched this thing on. He could get access to what they were thinking and planning, or at least to some of it. The Soros found out and tried to destroy us. You see, Mark also thought the implants were what the Soros used to control some humans, the Human Freedom League, for example, and you want to find out if we have any implants, or whatever." "Two, is that it?" asked Roberts, "like we might be secret members of the League." "Yes. And judging by these, you are clear, gentlemen. You are all human, and free from Soros control. Go on, please," said Talbot. Jeanette explained the details of their flight across Scotland, their capture in Glasgow, and the events leading to Miller's death. "Anyhow," she concluded, Mark felt that everything was leading him back to the Soros ship. He had to go there, confront their leader, the one he called Striped Arm. Talbot interrupted this time. Their leader's spacesuit was distinguished by a striped arm around the lower arm. But no one outside of the Soros circle, and that meant Aaron Miller, myself and few others who were absolutely sworn to secrecy, knew about that. We released as few details as possible, and I don't think that was among them. So for Mark to know that, confirms he had special powers," said Jeanette. "I think I am starting to believe you," remarked the general. Roberts made a noise almost like derision. "Believe her? I've told you. General, I saw with my own eyes what this boy can do. This is for real. Mark said. Continued Jeanette, that there was a second ship, a kind of mother ship as they used to say in the old sci-fi movies. It was located in the atmosphere above the North Pole. Hiding in the magnetic field, Talbot raised his eyebrows. Well, frankly. Yes, that's so. Confirmed Talbot. His face became suddenly even more serious, as he leaned forward and said, Mrs. Daniels Jeanette, it will be of no comfort to you now to learn that at 9:18 this morning USAF jets on patrol in that very area detected and made visual contact with a very large extraterrestrial spaceship, very large indeed. A smaller ship, description closely matching the ship from McIntyre Field, docked with the larger ship, and was taken inside it. At 0920 the larger ship, with the smaller one still inside it, flew above the atmosphere and left Earth orbit. He glanced at Roberts as if uncertain how to continue. Jeanette, our satellites tracked the ship for 10 minutes. What are you saying to me? We lost it once it passed the orbit of the moon, weakly. Jeanette said. What? She seemed to collapse in on herself. Carrie's expression was one of sheer horror. The Soros have gone, said Talbot heavily. We don't know where, we don't know why, and we can't do a damn thing about it. And they've taken Mark with them. Mark. Jeanette's grief was terrible to see. She clung to Carrie. Where have they taken him? What are they doing to him? Roberts and Talbot exchanged an uneasy glance. They could find no words to meet the needs of this situation. It was Carrie who finally spoke. Wait a minute. We need to have a little faith in him. He's not exactly helpless. Remember his power. We both felt it and saw it. Come on. Mark needs us to have faith in him. He'll come through this. He will. I know it. Jeanette held Carrie at arm's length and looked at her through tear-filled eyes. She closed her eyes and held the girl tight, clinging to her, clinging to hope. 30 The enemy. Darkness. I am aware I am thinking, therefore I exist. I am alive. At least in some sense of the word. And then a feeling, an intuition, the old kind, like when Mark could diagnose car faults or predict the sex of an unborn baby or know when a beam weapon satellite was targeting his house. A strong intuition of speed. Great speed, unbelievable speed. Where is my power? Mark wondered. I have memories. I remember Carrie, and my mother, and what we had for breakfast this morning before we left that safe house and the Honda motorbike that I stole. And when I was 6 I had an argument at school with Ian Bannerman who stole my coat and stuffed it into a waste bin in the cloakroom, and I have all these memories. How can you have memories if you re-dead? If your brain is the store of memories, and if your brain is dead then you are dead, then how can I still have memories? I am still alive. My brain is still alive. More memories returned, standing watching Carrie flounce in a most attractive manner up her driveway, the first dance with her at the school dance when they first got together. Alicia Wotherspoon outside the toilets that night saying drunkenly, Mark, I've always fancied you. And reeling off to dance with someone else, the black and white penguin his mother had placed in his pram when he was 2, memory after memory. Image after image, then a blue dolphin on a motorcycle and Carrie behind a tungsten wire fence saying in a whisper I love you, and then the power surged within him, driving through the channels and fibers of his being, filling his every particle until he felt that he must explode in dazzling, searing light. Can I feel my body? He tried to make a fist. His hand felt like it was 1,000 miles away. Contact. Like a huge door sliding slowly open, or mighty gears grinding to mesh, the awareness of his body gradually, painfully returned. And now, at last, he had everything, the meaning of it all, totally clear. He had exerted the merest gram of the tremendous power he knew lay within him and at once, instantly, full awareness and more returned. We've just passed the orbit of Pluto. The sun is merely the brightest dot in a canopy of bright dots. We are traveling in the mother ship at light speed. This is a giant ship 5 kilometers in diameter, at least. I am accessing this ship's controls now, but I am not sure yet exactly what everything does. I can see myself as the Soros see me. They see me as a weapon. I am strapped to a chair, held in one of the ship's escape pods. Why keep me imprisoned in an escape pod? It is armed multi-directional beam weapons and some kind of immensely powerful nuclear blaster. Anti-grav pulses cascade up and down and around the hull of the pod, for in that way the Soros think they can harness my magnetic field, my power. But they are wrong. Now Striped Arm has discovered I am awake. His mind is full of wonder, and guilt, and pleasure that I am awake, and he thinks I am afraid. Michael Daniels. You have woken up. Good. His telepathic voice sounded almost glad. Now you will tell me what you are hiding from me. Mark replied. The enemy, in the second ship, is very close. On this ship we number 125. On the second ship. About 40 of our friends remain, but they are, of course, no longer our friends. They are tools and playthings for the obscene experiments of the enemy. But, unfortunately, our telepathic link remains. It gets stronger as we approach each other. Their agony is becoming our agony. Why not wait until they reached Earth? Because, Striped Arm explained. To do so would be fatal, for us and for your people. Once on Earth, these monsters would enter any and every organism. They could take refuge in the smallest insect, or transform the largest mammal into something unrecognizable. We could not stop them. The human race, for all its imagination, could not stop them. It would be the end of all life for us both, so we must face them here, in space, and we hope you are the weapon which will defeat them. And if not, at least we may destroy the ship. Our weapons are formidable, although of no use against these beings. But though we may die ourselves, we might give the planet a little time. Without light speed it would take many years for these things to reach Earth from here. This was not your first intention. What was your first intention? Mark demanded. Striped Arm appeared to give what, in a human, would be a sigh. Some of us thought that another plan, a different plan, would work. I have no amusement in telling you this now. For years we have been experimenting on human brains. Some of our scientists developed a machine, a kind of robot, only more organic carbon-based, and we have the capability to transplant a human brain into it, without damaging the brain in any way. You have already done this. Haven TU. You've already created robots with human brains. Yes, admitted Striped Arm, we have. We had to. In doing so we came to a full understanding of how the human brain works. Don TUC. Our experiments, gruesome as they seem to you, were necessary in order for you to become what you are. Our experiments were not completely successful, but you have not put me into one of these machines. No, when one of you said take what we want now he meant take my brain. Didn't he? Yes, but you didn't. You could have, but you didn't. Why not? Then it dawned on him. You, Striped Arm bowed his head humbly. You prevented them. Why? Asked Mark. I saw that in you we had done what we set out to do. We made you angry, we made you afraid, and the natural chemicals in your brain stimulated by those powerful human emotions did the rest for us. We tricked you and made you cautious, we duped you and made you wise. You have no need of machines now. Mark Daniels. You have no need of Soros robots. Your power is only limited by your imagination, and that could be virtually limitless. You can. Pain, agony, terror suddenly ripped and crashed through Striped Arm's mind, and Mark, with the close telepathic link, felt it just as much. And behind this initial shock wave came wave after wave, pulse after pulse of horror. Like Striped Arm, he was linked with the Soros on the second ship, and through them he saw what Striped Arm dreaded so much. He glimpsed the enemy. The Soros had been right to be afraid. Monsters beyond reason, beyond control, beyond the furthest reaches of the most depraved human imagination. The two giant ships, at light speed, hurtled towards each other through the blackness of space. On the approaching ship, the enemy reached out some tendril of rational impulse. It caressed the minds of the creatures who had once been Soros, whose corrupted shapes occupied the positions that controlled the helm. Their mis-shaped limbs twitched at the controls. Both ships began to slow. Striped Arm fought for control of his own thoughts. All the Soros on the mother ship were fighting for control of their reason. All were mortally afraid. Mark Daniels, the enemy, are using the telepathic link. They are already crossing the gulf between us, trying to take control of our ship. Striped Arm's three-clawed hand closed on a control switch. Mark understood exactly what he had to do. The clamps holding the escape pod blew with explosive force. A door in the side of the mother ship swung open and the pod was ejected into space. Immediately Mark formed a force field about himself and the pod. He stretched out his power and stopped the motion of the pod, bringing it parallel to the Soros ship. The straps and bolts holding his wrists and ankles dropped away and he stood up shakily. A viewscreen flicked on. He stared across the gulf at the two giant spacecraft. They were only a couple of kilometers apart, facing each other like protagonists in some ancient duel. And the Soros intention was for him to be the ambush. He sensed what the enemy was doing. Because he was human, and they had never encountered a human before. They were not attuned to his presence. It would not take them long to sense him, though. And when they did, they would lose no time in moving across space to invade and occupy and corrupt his mind. For the moment they were using the telepathic link to cross to the mothership. Mark could almost see their shapes, hideous and loathsome. He reached out, into the second ship, found a Soros that had been twisted and warped into a travesty of a living creature. This creature was crouched over a helm control. He sensed the enemy presence within. He wrapped his force around the enemy, a series of impulses interconnecting on a subatomic level. That is how they move through matter, realized Mark. They are like subatomic cancers. But they can move through this. He tightened the force around the enemy presence and contracted it. Like a bubble shrinking, but a bubble of steel collapsing in on itself in a microsecond. The subatomic impulses that created the presence were instantly dissipated. No scream, no drama, no puff of smoke, just annihilation pure and simple. The Soros host for the enemy presence, its mind free at last from its vile control, expressed confusion, then relief, then gladness. But its body could no longer support life, and it slumped lifeless over the helm controls. But now his presence had been detected. As chaos now reigned on the Soros ship, the enemy ship seemed to turn towards the pod, its attitude shifting slightly. Enormous weapons were trained on the little pod. The enemy, working through the twisted remains of the crew, opened fire. A bolt of energy flashed across the blackness. The pod was engulfed. Nothing material could have withstood that force for long. But the magnetic force field parted the energy waves effortlessly, channeling them around and away. The bolt could have destroyed a small city. The pod, when the first attack was over, was unharmed. But Mark was shaken. For the first time it had occurred to him with absolute clarity, that he could die out here. He saw in his mind Striped Arm. Striped Arm's head seemed to be changing shape, bulging and rolling, cells mutating, fusing, becoming utterly alien, and his hand was trembling as he fought not to press the weapon's control panel. Striped Arm was facing the inevitability of his own death. The enemy were trying to turn the weapons of both ships on the pod. Striped Arm, fighting for his life, was trying to give Mark Daniels time. Mark reached into Striped Arm's alien mind. He enveloped the enemy presence. He closed his steel trap around it and extinguished it, like fingers on a candle flame. Mark felt the tension go out of Striped Arm and then his link was cut. The Soros leader was dead. But this time, other presences pressed and crowded upon him. He withdrew from the ship, but they had latched onto him now. They wanted his power. If Mark had been afraid before, this was 1,000 times worse. The Soros, for all their strangeness, had at least been of Earth. But these entities, they were so alien, so terrifying. Death was not the worst thing that could happen to him out here. The controls of the ship were designed for Soros' hands. What the hell do I do? Panic seized him. He began to tremble uncontrollably. Now both Soros ships had angled towards him and their weapons locked onto the pod. They fired. But once more the force field withstood the attack. Fear had driven Mark's reason out of his mind. Wide-eyed, almost paralyzed with panic, he stared at the controls in front of him. His imagination was conjuring up unbidden images of the horrors the enemy would perform on him. They were trying to penetrate the force field even now. Some of them had crossed the vacuum of space and sought for a way to enter the pod, like vampires tapping at a window, insistent. Oh God. Think, what can I do? He sensed the entities outside of the force field, incomprehensible as moths round a candle. He imagined a fist in his mind, then the fist opened, stretched out, snapped up the subatomic patterns of the entities and it utterly crushed them. He stretched out again and swatted the second Soros ship. The 5-kilometer craft flew spinning through space as if it was no more than a child's frisbee. Mark's panic began to recede and he was able to grapple with the controls of the pod. The enemy entities struggled to understand what had happened. Putting out his mind again, he scanned Striped Arm's ship. It was infested with the alien presences. He threw his force like a net around them, and pulled it tight. Next moment, they were extinguished. The second Soros ship was regaining control itself. The enemy on board felt no familiar emotions. There was no anger, or surprise, or anything that Mark could recognize as feeling. Nor was there any concept of mercy or even of simple giving up. Mark had walked through walls before, and could understand how that could be done. Now it came to him that he could open doors through space. He stepped forward towards the viewscreen of the pod. And stepped forward to rest a hand on Striped Arm's command chair on the bridge of the mothership. This gave Mark confidence now. If he could cross distances like that, what could he not do? Could he get himself back to Earth without a Soros ship? The second ship was opening fire. Mark instantly put up a shield to deflect the blast, then, like an alchemist putting a stopper in a magic bottle, he blocked the second ship's weapons system. The effect was like spiking a cannon. The energy, with no outlet, doubled back on itself. The ship expanded like a softly inflated balloon, but the explosion was immense. The gigantic ship seemed to puff up, then collapse in on Itelf, and finally it blew apart in a billion pieces. Mark watched with a mixture of elation and stupefaction. He had always associated explosions with noise, but this was like watching a silent movie. There is no sound in space. There is nothing to carry sound waves. No noise, no screams, just white-hot shrapnel bouncing off the force field he had created. He threw out his mental net again. The enemy presences were like stunned fish drifting in a sunless ocean. Group by group he obliterated them all, they could not touch him now, and he scattered their subatomic particles between the stars. Mark ran 2 hands through his hair. He slumped forward and rested his hands on the command chair. He looked at Striped Arm's body, the 3-fingered claw and the motionless reptilian face. He felt horribly alone. Throughout the ship it seemed that nothing moved. He scanned the controls and wondered what on earth he should do next. Asterisk 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 asterisk. 31 Tuesday night. Logan number 4. Logan is confused. He lies on one arm on the thick quilt and his unblinking gaze is directed outside the Travel-In Motel's small bedroom window at the restricted view of the pale blue late afternoon sky. Here in England, in this suburb of the unremarkable town of Uttoxeter, the weather is noticeably warmer but the air conditioning shields him from the persistent mugginess. The window faces north. That way lies the sprawling amusement park of Alton Towers with its Soros Galaxy ride, advertised in the motel foyer as the most terrifying ride in Europe. And beyond that, the rolling hills and fields and massive urban sprawls and motorways of England. And beyond that Scotland, but a Scotland without a mushroom cloud, and that is the first reason for Logan's confusion. Yet on the 4 o'clock news he has clearly seen footage of the Daniels woman and the boy's girlfriend, under armed escort by soldiers heading towards the HQ in McIntyre's field. How could that be? How could they have been released from his flat without setting off the bomb? What had gone wrong? Was the bomb wrongly constructed? Had he made mistakes? But the boy has been taken by the aliens and the aliens have taken off. So, in a way, the main objective has been achieved, the aliens have gone. Maybe they had got wind of the bomb and been scared off. Its blast certainly would have blown them to kingdom come, that's for sure. But Logan is not entirely convinced by the logic of that argument. Area of confusion number 2. Area of confusion number 3. The source of that lay on the dressing table, the SuperNet interface that is standard equipment in 2-star motel rooms. He has checked it out earlier but could not access the familiar site. His incomprehension at that is profound. He feels like an addict without a fix, and he shies away from that thought. It does not square with the image he holds of himself. But what he cannot shy away from is the incontrovertible fact that he can no longer contact the chairman. That more than puzzles him, it makes him feel cut loose, adrift. The threads of his purpose are beginning to unravel. He puts that thought away too. Of course, he has already contacted other members of the League including the commander in this area, so he is not alone. No problem with that. In fact, the resources of the League are totally available to him. Tomorrow he will pick up new identity cards from a drop point in Kettering. ID, passport, credit cards, employment history, references, everything necessary to disappear as Logan and start afresh. A spell abroad is called for. The League commander has suggested a few months abroad and offered him the use of his apartment in a village near Rimini in eastern Italy. Logan is very much inclined to take up the offer. But why had the bomb not detonated? Why had the aliens really gone? Are they gone for good, or is this just a ruse? A preamble to invasion. Why have they taken the boy with them? Where is the chairman, and why has his site disappeared from the supernet? So many questions. Logan pushes himself off the bed and stumbles over his Scarpa boots to the dressing table. He switches on the kettle, tears open one of the cappuccino sachets and pours the granules into a small cup. When the kettle has boiled, he pours some water into the cup and stirs it with a spoon,